So consider the following statements with respect to ways and means advance that was in the news recently. So the first one, it acts as a loan facility to the central and state governments to meet their temporary cash requirements. And second one, there is enough flexibility of about 1 year for state and central governments to pay back the loan extended through ways and means advances. And third one, there is no limit of amount of borrowing that can be made through this mechanism. So kindly mark your answer, and then we'll see the each statement wise. So this is how usually UPSC also focuses, like various mechanisms through which government sources the money. And this is very important because you all know, like even our chief minister KCR also complained, like we are not getting the funds from center and all. So when we are not getting the funds, when we are not getting the GST revenues, then what are the alternatives that government has to source the money? So out of that, this is one of the important way, and it was constantly in news. So here if you see the first statement, it is absolutely correct because it is a kind of loan mechanism where RBI acts as a bank for both central and state governments. You all know RBI is a banker of banker, but there is also another job called bank of governments. So where it can give loans. So that's why the first statement is correct. Whereas if you go for the second statement, that is wrong because it is saying about 1 year. And when you say temporary cash requirements and then you see 1 year, it doesn't fit in that logic because temporary means usually it will be in the months. So here also the time limit is 90 days. Okay, so that's why the second statement is wrong. And then finally the third one is also wrong because if you keep on giving the loans, then states will be always happy to take as much as they want. So that's why the third statement is also wrong here. Only the statement answer is D here, one and only. So now we'll see the different ways how government meets their temporary cash needs. So first of all, why the government will have this requirement of meeting this temporary cash requirement? First thing, if you see recently during the disaster times like COVID times, whatever the expected revenues that government expects usually in the budget year will not be met. For example, if you see the due to the lockdown, all the businesses have been shut down, so there was no GST revenue, so there was no tax collection for the government. So that is why during that time government however will have the same or increased expenditure also to deal with situations like COVID. So to meet them, there will be a phase called temporary measurements. So under that, there are three ways how government can procure the finances. So that are, first one, issuance of treasury bills. Okay, and second method is ways and means advances, and the third statement is, or third method is, cash management bills. Okay, so in the treasury bills what they do is they issue the bills, government bills, that too short term, that is less than 1 year. But there is a limit to this and limit to this option because usually these treasury bills will be, or the interest rate on which the treasury bills the government has to pay usually will be high. So that's why they will not go completely on this. And also there will be fiscal deficit target, so that is why they will not always go with only first method. And in the second method, as I said, RBI is the main source. Here RBI will provide the loans under this method. And in the third one, it is again similar to treasury bills, but these are even more short term, like only for 90 days. So these are again a type of treasury bills, but that are of 90 days, that can be given by central government, not the state government. This is again you have to remember. Okay, whereas treasury bills can be issued by both state and center, and ways and means advance are mainly taken by state governments. Okay, so these are the three methods. And then if we see the ways and means advance in detail, so here you have to keep three facts in mind. First thing, there is a limit on how much states can borrow. This limit will be decided by both RBI and the central government. Okay, that is the first thing, to ensure the fiscal discipline. Second thing, they have to pay back the amount in 90 days because it is only for temporary purposes. And third thing, the interest rates will be fixed usually by the RBI, and nowadays it is at the same rate of repo rate. Okay, so these are the three statements that are important. And apart from these ways and means treasury bills and cash management bills, there is also another option called overdraft. Okay, overdraft mechanism. Overdraft is same like your bank account. Like if you have a bank account, some banks provide overdraft facility. That means like a credit facility on your savings account. When you don't even have the balance, or if you have a 500 rupees balance, you can go for purchases more than 500. That means bank will pay in before, in advance. That is overdraft facility, and then you can pay it back. So this is overdraft. Similarly, government will also have certain kind of overdraft facility with RBI. So there is a time limit of about 12 days. In 12 days, if government takes money from RBI more than what balance it has with the RBI, then it has to pay back in 12 days. So that is overdraft facility. As I said, the limits will be decided by RBI and the government of India. And see, the rate on overdrafts will be 2% more than repo rate. That is why governments will not go for overdraft, because it is like penalizing. They have to pay more. And then finally, one more thing, this ways and means advance is not shown as source of financing in budget estimates, because this is only an emergency measure. Like when you have this crash crunch, only then you will go to RBI. And finally, yeah, the another important thing, in ways and means advances also there are two types. One is normal and the other is special. So first we'll see with the special one. So special is special drawing facility or special ways and means advance. So in this, government will already have certain government securities or certain bonds. So that they will put with RBI and will get the loan. Okay. So because there are certain collateral securities, the interest rate will be bit less than the repo rate. So this is a safe option for the government in the first case. But let's say, for example, government has exhausted this also, and government needs more money and they don't have any securities to put with RBI. So that is when the second option will come. So that is the normal ways and means advance. So this is usually calculated as 3-year average of revenue and capital expenditure of that particular state. So right now it is about repo rate. Okay. So these are the two important types of WMA. So with this, we'll go to the second topic. So this is pretty easy one. So consider the following statements with respect to geofencing technology that was seen in news. Again, yeah. So first we'll read the options and then we'll see the answer. So A, it acts as a protection mechanism for satellites in geostationary orbit to avoid collisions. Second one, it is a virtual fence creation technology to trigger a pre-programmed action where an entity enters or exits a virtual boundary setup. Third one, it's a new form of defense technology against incoming ballistic missiles. And fourth one, it is a space-based technology to monitor the mineral resources of a country. So geofencing you would have already read in many newspapers, so it is very easy if you already know this technology. But this is what specifically UPSC does. It gives the options in such a way that we feel somewhere that option is connected to the term. Like every option will be like equally reasonable. So that is why I framed this in form of 4 statements. So here if you see, everything sounds, because geofencing, so some might link in that way also. So don't go for such kind of logics. Usually UPSC also tries to put you in that traps. So here it is mainly about this new app that was created by Ministry of Telecommunications. In that, what they do is, if you have a COVID symptoms or if you're a COVID positive guy, and if you move out of a certain limit range or geographic limit range of a mobile tower, then automatically alerts will go. So that is geofencing. So basically what they do, they either use mobile technology, GPS or RFID to create a kind of geographical structure or boundary. And if any device enters or exits from that boundary, then automatically alerts will be generated. That is geofencing technology. So which one suits among this? It is B. So the answer is B here. So now we'll see this in detail, like in what are the other areas where it is being used. So as you can see here, it's a location-based service. It uses many technologies like GPS, RFID, Wi-Fi, or even the cellular data, basically to mark an artificial fence around a geographic location. And that they call it as a geofence, that is virtual fence. And then it will be used to identify if there are any vehicles that are coming or leaving that area, because every vehicle will have certain ID like RFID or GPS tag. So if it is entering or exiting out of that area, then it will be easy for the owner to get alert. Similarly, nowadays this technology is also being used in GST also. So whenever you have a GST vehicle, and if you have a certain invoice and it has to go through particular route, and if it is diverted, then it will be easy for the owner to track it. Similarly, it is now being used in narcotics, in identification of smuggling and all. So there are various applications nowadays, even in defense areas also. They can identify if there is any other vehicle that is entering a particular location or not. So that way, right now, geofencing is not just related to COVID or this apps, but has applications in many areas. You can see here, right from social networking. So in social networking also, if you can see, if you go to particular district or area, you get particular kind of ads, because they know that in that area only that particular product will get purchased more. So this way the targeting of ads will be done based on geofencing. Similarly, then marketing, the similar thing. And then audience engagement, smart appliances, especially with respect to Internet of Things. And then human resource management also. Like even for work from home also, if they want to ensure like if all the people of IT industry have to work from home itself, they can monitor. So these are some of the applications. And the way how it works is usually what they do is they will have a receiver and transmitter, and they will set up the fence, virtual fence, and then they will track if anyone is moving from there. So that is a geofencing. And these are the other three mechanisms. This is just a quick revision for you. I know you already have an idea about this. Like in GPS, it is basically an US based service which uses the coordinates using the satellites. And when it comes to RFID, you all know it uses radio waves, and it doesn't require line of sight communication. Remember this. These are the terms, technical terms that are needed. Like radio waves doesn't need line of sight. And then Wi-Fi uses radio waves to transmit the internet between many devices. On top of Wi-Fi now came Li-Fi. So kindly know about that also. Li-Fi uses light as a source, or light as a medium to transmit the internet information, and it is believed it has more speed and efficiency. So kindly know much more details about that. So this is again a revision kind of concept for you, because you would have already studied in geography. So kindly read the statements carefully here. So consider the following statements with respect to Western disturbances. First one, Western disturbances are tropical cyclones that develop over the Mediterranean Sea and travels over West Asia and enter India from northwest. Second one, it is embedded or enabled with the flow of easterlies in the same direction. Third one, it has great importance in agriculture, particularly for rabi crops, including wheat in northern belt due to the timely moisture it brings. So kindly, these are again tricky statements. Read them carefully and mark your answer. Okay. So if you're done with the marking, we'll see each of this statement. So here, if you see the first statement, the statement is correct as a whole, but there is a small catch here. It is saying tropical cyclones. Do you think Western disturbances are tropical cyclones? No, that is why the first statement is wrong. They are extra tropical cyclones. Tropical cyclones are the cyclones that occur in and around the tropics. That is 5 degrees to the top of the equator, or about 15 degrees. If any cyclone that happens above that or below that, then you call it as extra tropical cyclones. Because cyclones usually happen only in the tropical areas. There are very small latitude areas where these kind of things happen. These are called extra tropical cyclones. Always remember them. The rest of the statement is correct. They originate in Mediterranean Sea and they travel from West Asia and they enter India from Pakistan and Afghanistan. So that's why you call Western disturbances. But just because we don't focus on tropical cyclones, we usually end up marking the first statement as correct. Okay, so here the first statement is wrong. Second thing, it is embedded or enabled with the flow of easterlies. This is again wrong, because if you know, if you would have studied already, easterlies are something that flow from east to west. So the word describes the source of origin. So easterlies, if it is starting from east, how the Western disturbances will come from west. So Western disturbances are associated with westerlies. So that's why second statement is also wrong here. And third one is correct, because it actually helps wheat production in the northern belt. Because in the winter season, this is the disturbances, or these are the phenomena that bring some kind of rains in that area, and with that wheat production will be high. So that it is kind of a good thing for northern belt, but sometimes it also causes certain disasters when it combines with other phenomena. So that's why here the third statement is correct, but I don't have it as an option. Okay, so you can mark it as correct. So here third is the only option as correct. So it should be ideally that should be 3 only. Okay. Yeah, if somebody would have identified third as the only correct one, then you can mark your answer as correct. So now we'll see this in detail, like some of the facts that you can quickly revise. I know you already would have studied this, but just for a quick revision. So the context is basically the rains, sudden rains happened in Delhi in the end of March and early April. So that's why this was in news. And you all know storms are natural phenomenon that usually develops around low pressure area, and the winds come from high pressure area to low pressure area. And then if it is the northern hemisphere, then that winds or the storm will rotate in counterclockwise. Okay, and if it is southern hemisphere, then it is clockwise. Always remember this. If it is south clockwise, that is south is correct, north is wrong. Remember in this way. Okay, it will be easy. South is always correct, north is wrong. So in that way you can see south clockwise, north counterclockwise, because north is wrong. And then as I said, tropical cyclones usually happen between 5 degrees and 30 degrees of tropics, and western disturbances are something that happen above this. That is why it is called mid latitude or extratropical cyclones. And these are also called as winter storms because these usually happen in winters, and this originate in Mediterranean Sea and then travels westwards to India. So someone might have doubt that if it is traveling through Iran, Pakistan and all these areas which are dry, how come it brings rains and all? It brings rain because it starts first in Mediterranean Ocean and then goes to this Black Sea, and from there it enters through the dry lands, and in between again you have Caspian Sea here. So that is why it gets all the moisture that is required, like how the southwest monsoons get the moisture from Indian Ocean, and then finally when they meet the Himalayas here, they can't go up. So that is why they cause rain over this northern belt here. So that is how western disturbances are caused. And it also causes snow in Jammu and Kashmir and Uttarakhand. Okay. And famous Uttarakhand floods in 2015, I believe, is because of this western disturbances. Yeah. So the good thing about this western disturbances is it gives good wheat harvest in the northern region. So that is about western disturbances. Again, and another important uh, issue, but and this topic is also somehow related to COVID only, because at that time government has suspended this MP LAT scheme. So that's why MP LATs is also important for this year. So consider the following statements with respect to MP LAT scheme. So first statement: every MP is granted with 1 crore per year to be spent on projects of their choice in their constituency. Second one, it was started in 1993 with statutory backing with the intention of creating durable community assets based on locally felt needs. Third one, the scheme is funded and administered through the Ministry of Rural Development. So kindly once again read those statements carefully and mark your answer. Okay, so coming back to the question, here again there are traps here. So if you read the second statement, you might be wondering like why the year is mentioned. Do we need to even remember the year also? This is again a trap. UPSC also does it. It doesn't give a wrong year. It gives the right year, but it tries to grab your attention on that year. And that way it will make you commit mistake in the other part of the sentence. Here, the year is not important. The statutory backing is the keyword. Whether it has any statutory law. What is statutory means? That means it should have a backing of any act that is passed by the parliament. MP LATS is a scheme. It doesn't have any statutory backing. So that is the trap here. So rest of the statement is correct again. So second statement is wrong here because of this statutory backing keyword. And usually whenever year is mentioned, don't bother much about that facts. So second statement is wrong. And first statement is also wrong because it is not 1 crore per year, but it is 5 crore per year. This is again a fact. So first statement is also wrong. That is why I said there are many traps in these statements. And third one is also wrong. It is not Ministry of Rural Development. It is Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So because again, even if I mention here Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, many would actually link it logically. And they say MP LATS, how it is connected to statistics. So third statement would have been wrong. So sometimes logics will not work. So kindly remember facts also in certain cases. So here all the three statements are wrong. So the answer is D. So this is just an exercise to show you that despite you know many schemes very well, there are certain questions which make you commit mistakes. Okay, so coming back to this scheme, a quick revision. So right now you know the context for 2020 and 2021. Government has suspended the MPLAD funds and they will be used for dealing with Corona. And second thing, there is an cut in the salaries of MPs, including Prime Minister, of about 30%. So that is the context. And as I said, it is a scheme that is run by basically Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and it will allocate 5 crore per year, and it doesn't have any statutory backing because every scheme will not have it. Only MNREGA is certain scheme which has statutory backing. Okay, those are very good acts. Like National Food Security is something backed by an act. So these are important schemes, and it doesn't have. And in this MP lads, the how the scheme works is basically first the ministry will allocate 5 crore per MP, and then MP will try to choose the project or suggest. He will not even choose, he will suggest the project to the district collector. So it is ultimately the district collector who will implement the project. So MP's role will be to the extent that he can identify the needs of that constituency and suggest a project to the district collector, and the implementing agency is district authority. Okay, and the ministry, you have already seen it. And next important fact is the funds that are there in this are non-lapsable. That means the funds will keep on accruing. And next thing, you might be surprised to know that right now, as I said, MPs will be looking to spend these funds in their respective constituency. But what about the nominated members of Rajya Sabha? Because they might be from the state. So in that case, they can, elected members of Rajya Sabha representing the whole of the state, can choose in one or more districts of, or whatever the selection they can make. Like they can choose any district, one or two districts of that entire state. And similarly, there are nominated members in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. They don't represent any particular constituency. So in that case, they can select in any district in all over the country. So if you are Rajya Sabha member, then it might be the district of that state. If you are nominated, then district of the entire country, any district of that country. And another thing, MPs have this flexibility of selecting 25 lakhs, spending 25 lakhs on a projects that are outside the constituency also, in intention to promote national unity, harmony, and fraternity. So this is like a national building activity. So this limitations is not much important from prelims point of view, but it is very important from mains point of view. Suppose there is an assessment or analysis of this MPLAT scheme. So these are the problems that it has. So the limitations are, first thing, it is basically encroaching into the powers of third tier, that is local self-government. So it is something, or the fund should be directly given to the gram panchayats. Already gram panchayats are complaining that they don't have funds. So that is why this is one limitation. Second thing, we all know that executive should be separated from legislature. So here MPs are nothing but legislature. So it is again like is against this concept of separating legislature and executive. And third thing, CAG also, like in periodic reports, highlighted that there is big problems with these kind of scheme because these funds are actually spent on their private projects. And then finally, it doesn't have any statutory backing. So that is why the government of the day can decide. That are about limitations. So this is a quick diagram, infographic diagram, so that you can remember it easily. Just go through it. This is something we have already discussed. So you can see here MP suggesting to district authorities, and then right side is the ministry, and then he can do the project and upload it in that website, and citizens can file RTA to get the information. So now the fifth topic, consider the following statements with respect to SAARC and BIMSTEC regional organizations. This is again something you might be thinking that it is very easy. I know everything about SAARC. Read those statements very carefully because there are many traps in them. Okay, so the first one, Maldives and Nepal are two countries that are members of SAARC but not of BIMSTEC. Okay, second one, the secretariat of SAARC is in Kathmandu, Nepal, whereas secretariat of BIMSTEC is in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And third one, BBI and Kaladan multimodal projects are some of the important initiatives of SAARC. So kindly, I know these questions are becoming difficult day by day, but because you are coming close to prelims, I am also trying to improve the difficulty. So kindly read them once again, and then I'll go through each of those statements. So if you would have marked your answer. So here again, the first statement is wrong, because yes, Maldives and Nepal both are part of SAARC, but in BIMSTEC, Nepal is also part. Okay, Maldives is not part, but Nepal is part of BIMSTEC. So that's why the first statement stands wrong. And when it comes to second, some of you might have got the habit that in any question that I frame, I usually interchange, but here I didn't interchange. So second statement is again correct here. So basically, SARC secretariat is in Kathmandu and BIMSTEC secretariat is in Dhaka, Bangladesh. This also you have to remember always. Okay, SARC always goes with Nepal and BIMSTEC goes with Bangladesh. Or you can bring a logic that Bangladesh being a Bay of Bengal coastal country, the BIMSTEC is there. SARC is something about South Asia, so that's why the focal point is Nepal. And third statement is wrong here. These are not the initiatives of SARC. Because SARC didn't work, we went to BIMSTEC specifically for this connectivity initiatives. And even if you see these connectivity initiatives, Kaladhan especially goes through Myanmar, and Myanmar is not something in SARC. So that's how also you can derive the correct statement. So here 2 only is the answer. B is the answer. So now why this question? This question is framed because SARC was very much in news for 2 reasons. One, many people have suggested that slowly SARC relevance is decreasing and BIMSTEC is becoming alternative to SARC. Second thing, our Prime Minister Modi all of a sudden revived SARC with a fund called COVID-19 Emergency Fund, and he arranged for the first time virtual summit, and that was in the news for around 5 to 6 days. So that's why SARC is again very important for this year. So these are certain facts related to SARC. So here you can see headquarters and secretariat of the SARC is in Kathmandu. And second thing, SARC is basically is an international organization basically based on certain principles. Those principles are sovereign equality, territorial integrity, political independence, non-interference. So if you see, India mainly always talks about this. So SARC is something India dominated organization. That's how also you can remember them. And then finally, you know that SARC has 8 countries. So I'll show you the map so that you'll be able to remember it much better. So these are all the countries. First, we start with Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh. So these are bordering countries to India. And then you have maritime neighbors. Those are Sri Lanka and Maldives. Usually we forget Maldives as a SARC country. Kindly remember this because this is very important. You might not forget Afghanistan, but might forget Maldives. That's why I'm focusing here. Second thing, if you see BIMSTEC, first you have to focus on Bay of Bengal countries. So which are the countries that have coast with Bay of Bengal? It starts with Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Thailand. The other 2 countries which doesn't have Bay of Bengal but are very much dependent on Bay of Bengal, that are Bhutan and Nepal. So if you want any exports or imports to these countries, they always have to rely on Bay of Bengal. That's why these 2 countries are also part of BIMSTEC. Kindly remember this way. Okay, so here you have 7 countries and here you have 8 countries. The only country that is missing is Maldives. Even Afghanistan is missing, but Maldives is very important because you might get confused with this. So coming back to SARC, there are 3 important organizations. First thing, SARC Development Fund. So it basically gives funding for certain social sectors like poverty alleviation and development. Next thing, South Asian University. This is one of the successful example of SARC. Right now it is in New Delhi and it admits students from all these SARC countries. And then you have South Asia Regional Standards Organization, and importance of it is in Bangladesh. Okay, and it is one of the another successful example. And final thing, just like in WTO, how we have WTO dispute resolution body, we have SARC Arbitration Council also. This tries to settle disputes in trade and investment and banking. In these areas, if there is any dispute, they'll try to settle. Why? Because we have a South Asia Free Trade Agreement. So that's why whenever you have free trade agreement, there will be automatically disputes. So that is about SARC. And now coming back to BIMSTEC, importance of BIMSTEC is that BIMSTEC is an organization that works by identifying certain sectors, technical and economic sectors, and then they will focus on cooperation in that sectors. This is different from SARC. SARC is kind of cultural unity, economic unity, and political unity, where SARC is aiming to become EU-like organization, whereas BIMSTEC is an technical organization. So it mainly came together to utilize strengths of each other countries. So here you have 7 countries, and importance of it is 2 important things. First thing, it is called as a bridge between South and Southeast Asia. So if you see here, Myanmar and Thailand are Southeast Asia. Rest of the countries are South Asia. So it is acts as a bridge. Next thing, it connects South Asia to ASEAN. So this is a larger project of India. Eventually, we want to connect to ASEAN. So this is one of the organization that acts as a bridge. And another thing, as I said, BIMSTEC identifies sectors and then they will work. So in this way, they have identified 14 sectors, and then they will see which country has like strength in those sectors. Like for example, India has certain strength. Then they will establish, or that country will lead those sectors. So if you see in India, India is currently leading the BIMSTEC in the areas of transport and communication, tourism, counterterrorism, environment, and disaster management. You don't need to remember the countries that are leading other areas, but at least you should know what India is leading in. So these are the areas. And the permanent secretariat we have already seen. And these are the current projects that are going under BIMSTEC. One is Kaladan, Asian Trilateral Highway, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, Motor Vehicles Agreement. So this information will be useful for both prelims and mains. With that, we'll go to the next question. So consider the following statements related to 70th anniversary of Indian Council for Cultural Relations. First one, it is part of Ministry of External Affairs with a mandate to promote cultural diplomacy. Okay. Second one, it was founded in 1950 by Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, independent India's first education minister. And third one, ICCR has been assigned the responsibility of facilitating the celebration of International Day of Yoga by Indian mission posts. So these are again generic statements are there. So here first thing, this might be a trap, first statement, because you might be associating ICCR with Ministry of External Affairs, because it works in close coordination with external affairs, but it is not a body under Ministry of External Affairs. It is an independent autonomous body. So that's why the first statement is wrong, and second and third statement are correct. Even if you eliminate first, you'll be able to identify the answer from the options. So the answer is correct. Second one is correct. It is established by Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, and as you know, ICCR, if it has a mandate of promoting culture, yoga is the first important thing. So, and why this was in news? So the answer is B. Why this was in news is because first thing, it was celebrating 70th anniversary. Second thing, ICCR is a important tool of India's soft power. So this ICCR is an institution that promotes all this yoga, Sanskrit, Indian studies, and promotion of Indian culture, food in various missions across globe. So that is first thing, and these are the statements that we have already seen. So I'll start it with the fourth statement, that ICCR is autonomous organization. That is first thing, under Government of India, and its main mandate is to promote cultural relations or to promote soft power of India. And ICCR currently also gives certain awards to foreign nationals. So these are basically under 4 categories. This also you have to remember. Those awards are, first thing, Indologist Award, Distinguished Indologist Award. That means whoever studies about India or India culture, languages, those will be awarded with Indologist. So Indology is something about study of India. So to award them. And then World Sanskrit Award. So this is basically to promote Sanskrit in foreign countries. Like in Germany and all, Sanskrit is very famous because of ICCR initiatives. And then you have Distinguished Alumni Award. This is about foreign students who study in India so that they know more about India. So this is about Distinguished Alumni Award. And then finally, Gisela Bone Award. This is basically given to journalists, writers, and environmental activists, basically for journalists. And finally, yeah, this is software. This is just a fact. That is about ICCR. Finally, it comes to 7th topic, that is about World Gold Council. Consider the following statements with respect to World Gold Council. First statement, it is an international organization that is based out of Paris and promote gold consumption, marketing, and production. Second one, according to World Gold Council, India is the world's largest consumer of gold, that we already know. And right now it has the 11th largest gold reserve, according to this report. Third one, it has also developed conflict-free gold standard to help companies to provide assurance that their gold is not contributing to conflict. Kindly read these statements again and mark your answer. So coming back to this question, why this question is in news, because, or why I framed this question is, if you see in UPSC previous year papers, there was a question on Kimberley process or Kimberley. So that is about gold, diamonds. So usually these diamonds or gold is basically mined from African nations. And there, because of political instability, these might be ending up sponsoring those conflicts or sponsoring the extra state or non-state actors. So that's why there are certain process. As UPSC already asked on diamond, this time there might be a focus on World Gold Council. That's why I focus this. Second thing, you all know because of COVID, if there is any price that has skyrocketed, that is gold, because everyone invested in gold. So from that point of view also, World Gold Council is very important. So coming back to statement, first statement is wrong. Entire statement is correct, but it is wrong at this Secretariat of Paris. It is basically London based body, first thing. Second thing, it is not an international organization. It is a non-profit society or coming together of certain world gold producing countries. Okay, only production countries are linked together through this council. Second statement is correct and third statement is correct. So the answer is 2 and 3, that is B. So now we'll see this in detail. So for the first time, India has emerged as the 11th largest gold reserve country. So we have more gold reserves. And if you discount IMF, then we are the 10th largest gold reserve country. And second thing, this WGC, as I said, is a non-profit association of gold producers, and it is headquartered in London. Usually, always remember, if there is any consumers that are coming together, that will be either in London or in Africa, because these are the two countries that are associated with the supply chain of gold and diamond. And next thing, the important functions are three functions. First thing, it will try to promote the consumption of gold and marketing of gold. Second thing, it tries to set the standards. Like if you see this 24 karat and all, so those kind of standards will be set by the World Gold Council. Third thing, it will try to provide conflict-free gold standard. So these are the three things. Kindly remember them. So these are the main functions of WGC. And the same thing I have elaborated in detail. And then finally, another important thing associated with this gold is gold exchange traded fund. So first of all, we'll see what is exchange traded fund. So exchange traded fund is like a mutual fund which invests or is a kind of pool of funds that invest in shares, bonds, or commodities. And then the final price of this exchange traded fund will depend on the underlying assets. So this way, they will invest in all these assets. And the important thing is that the value of this exchange trade fund will depend on the underlying assets. That means if suppose gold value or physical gold price is decreasing, then the stock price will also decrease. That is the importance of exchange trade fund. In gold exchange traded fund, they will particularly invest in physical gold. And whenever you want money back, instead of you buying the physical gold, it is just like gold bonds. Only difference is instead of you buying the bonds, you buy gold based exchange traded funds where they invest in gold and gold related assets. So that is a difference. And then you can get back the money, either money or physical gold. That is about gold exchange traded funds. And finally, we have got one art and culture question as well. So consider the following statements with respect to Patachitra paintings. First statement, Patachitra style of painting is one of the oldest and most popular art forms of Odisha. Second one, the name Patachitra has evolved from the Sanskrit words Pata means canvas and Chitra means picture. Third one, the dominant themes represented through this art form are Hindu mythology and specially inspired by Jagannath and Vaishnava sect. So here again, you can, even if you don't have any idea, and you might, if you are confused whether it is based off Odisha or Andhra Pradesh, then you can relate 1 and 3. Because I'm saying here Jagannath cult. Where the Jagannath cult is found, Puri Jagannath temple and all, it is in Odisha. So either 1 and 3 should be correct or 1 and 3 should be wrong. So that's how also you can link. So here 1 and 3 are correct. It is basically an ancient style of painting that is originated in Odisha. And the second statement is also correct here. The meaning is correct. Pata means canvas and Chitra means picture. So basically they will take a cotton based canvas and then they will paint on that, and that is called Patachitra. And it is also like commissioned by many Rajas of South as well. So here the statement is, answer is C, 1, 2 and 3. Now we'll see this in detail. So this was in news because of two reasons. One, because of COVID again, the artisans who are dependent on this were unable to find the buyers. So there was huge losses, and there is a threat of extinction also, because there are certain villages in Odisha who completely dependent on these paintings. So that's why this was in Hindu News in August 14th or 13th. So as I said, it is basically out of Odisha, and the other facts we have seen. And these are the popular themes. So you can see here the Badia, Tiya Badia theme, that is Temple of Jagannath. And then you have Krishna Leela, Dasabharata Patti, and Panchamukhi. All of these are related to Hindu mythologies and Vaishnava sect and Jagannath sect. Remember this in this way. Okay. And usually a cloth will be taken, and then it will follow traditional process of preparing it. Like what they do is, first they'll prepare the base, and then they'll put some natural ingredients like powder of chalk and white and soft things were taken, and they mix, and then they will paste it on the canvas first, so that canvas will become thick. Okay. And then after that they will paint using the natural colors. After painting that, then they will either heat it with a charcoal fire or put some lacquer. So that is a lacquer is a kind of alcohol. With that, what happens is, even if when this painting comes in contact with the water and all, it will not get dissolved. So that is the important thing. So this is how they will make it. So you can see here again the statements. So like first, the borders will be first completed, and then painter starts making a rough sketch using light red and yellow, and then colors are normally white, red, yellow, and black. And you can see here when the painting is completed, it is held over charcoal fire and lacquer is applied to the surface. This makes painting water resistant and durable. So if you see many of the temples right now also, they will have these kind of patachitras. So they will be held in the background of idol, in the back of idol. So describing the mythological incidents, especially in the northern Odisha and some parts of Andhra Pradesh as well.